So, Jagan, good morning. And I'm just wanting to ask
Yes,
you a
sir.
question. Uh, what will you do? Suppose you are planning to go for a holiday, maybe in Ooty.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. What will you do?
Uh, sir, will bring the uh, anyway, what will be a coolest place? I will bring all my woolen cloths,
Okay.
sweaters,
Yes.
uh,
Then,
book a staying place there.
very good.
Those things I will plan, sir.
Okay. Stay place. Okay. So that means I'm going to
And
add a couple of things. Whenever you are making a
sir,
plan, you first see what is going to be the place you're going, or what is the thing you're going to anticipate. Suppose you're going to Jaipur, I'm sure you're not going to say, oh, it's a holiday plan, so I'll take woolen. So you will see what you're going to do. Again, when you're going to do, how long, or how is it going to be done. So whether you see, for example, today, because of the pandemic situation which is prevailing, you are likely to look at what I'll call as the time before which you need to go to the airport or to the railway station. So you will have to have a look at these things. Maybe you're planning for your e-pass and so on and so forth. Now, whenever we are talking about a plan, these are the things which is going to come into the picture. What is it that you are going to try to avoid? Now, earlier we had also spoken about something called risk and vulnerability. Okay. Now I'm jumping to the what you call as the natural disaster mitigation plan, where we try to see what are the things which are going to be acting against you, and maybe there are some things which are in favor of you. So you are going to see these together, and you are going to also look at how much is a population going to be vulnerable. Now, if you look at the natural disasters, there are two things which we need to understand. Point number one, the disaster itself. Okay, so the disaster itself is something which we talk about. Second, the post disaster. The post disaster, what you call as the things which we have to look at. Now, I'm going to just mark this as post disaster. Now, what is the thing which we are looking at? Many times, it's not the disaster itself which is causing the trouble, but what happens after the disaster. So this makes the work of looking at the post disaster very important also. Of course, there is also the pre-disaster preparation which you can do. For example, many of you who wrote about the mitigation plan for the earthquake stuck to the pre-disaster. It is very likely that because in our semester we were talking about how we can make the house or the building disaster resistant, making it more resilient to handle the disaster. These are some of the things which we have been discussing a lot. And of course, it's perfectly right because you're planning to prevent something from happening. However, when we talk about a plan, it's also equally important that we try to understand what are the impacts which you are foreseeing, and we are also going to see how we can mitigate it. Just like how Jagan was looking at the place where he was going for his holiday, and also thinking about what are the necessities which he has to take for himself and all the people around him, and he is going to make sure that all the people are comfortable. So I guess that's something which would be done on a holiday by most of us or by all of us. But very importantly, we are also looking at seeing how, when it comes to it, like when the disaster actually strikes you, how we are going to uh, act, or how we are going to react to the situation. Moving on, we'll probably see a couple of things, like what are the things which happen. See, for example, many of you have been very partial to Malaysia. I don't know why, but in any case, India also has a disaster management policy in place. Okay, India also has a disaster management policy in place, and this is something which I personally feel we need to look at. So, what are the things which happen is, we are having a national level, we are having a state level, and also we are having a district level uh, degree of planning. What happens is, there can be even below the district level, like, where you are going to look at what you call as the ward level, zilla level, village or panchayat level, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is again, like, this will keep on be dividing till literally you and I as individuals need to be part of the disaster management plan, right? So I wish that all of you understand that we will see how India works towards what we call as the uh, disaster management work. When we saw we were talking about the disasters being harmful, but many times the post disaster scenarios are even more harmful. Okay, now today, for example, we are having, of course, the pandemic, but very importantly, be noticing that floods is something which is being talked about very frequently in many of the newspapers, paper articles. Now, if suppose you are asking what is the thing which we have to do, one of the things is that there is always the pre-monsoon preparation which we need to do. So, what are the pre-monsoon preparation that is required to be done? Let us probably look at let us look at some of the things which we notice our people doing. One, you'll find that cutting trees, cutting branches. I won't say they cut the trees; they cut the branches near electric lines. Now, this is something which very often you can see happen in your place. People will come and cut the branches of the trees so that the wires will not get affected by the branches, what you call as falling on the lines, cutting the lines, branches short circuiting the lines, right? And also, what happens is that the danger is, if an electric line, live electric wire, is snapped because of these trees, they can cause other dangers. One, of course, the inconvenience of not having power is one side, but the more important thing is, a person could get electrocuted very easily. So this is one of the things which people do. And again, the other thing is that, you will notice that all water lines, all water bodies are cleared of debris. So what happens, like even now, last month or so in Vellore, we were having all the canals and drainage channels cleared of leaves, garbage, and other things. So it is inevitable. Leaves and other things are going to go and fall into, or are going to accumulate in your drains. Now these are major sources of clogging, and when this happens, water is not freely going to be able to move, right? Then afterwards, you will also see that in many of the places, you will be finding that the weather, or you got the cyclone trackers. So weather tracking will automatically be started. See, we were talking about conditions where we were going to have a heavy rain. So is the condition present in the ocean where water is warm, and you are going to see that there is a low pressure starting to get generated. And again, the formation of cyclones are quite what you call as predictable, and you will be able to see satellite imagery of clouds which are nothing but water vapor which is floating around in the atmosphere. When they are able to see all these signs, when they are able to visualize the wind patterns, where these are being fed into the computer, and then you get a likelihood of the formation of a adverse weather system. The second thing we are bothered about is what is the route which this adverse weather system is going to be taking. So now you will see that there are different places where you can probably fit in. So typically, whenever, if suppose you are also looking at, whenever you are looking at the pre-monsoon things, whenever you are planning, you know where you are going to accommodate people. So these people, of course, need food, water, and they also need medicines very frequently. Okay, so what are the things which are going to happen? See, for example, you can always look at the floods and say people are likely to get sick and have a fever. People are likely to get sick and going to have coughs and colds. Then you can keep on be looking at some of the other common things which you are having. Maybe you may have what you call as instances of malaria increasing because the wet areas become breeding grounds for mosquitoes. Okay, and people can have diarrhea. So these are some of the very common things which ail the people in India, or in particular, like, if suppose I was looking at preparing for my family getting sick, these are the things which I'll be having. So immediately you'll be able to see what are the kinds of medicines which are commonly going to be used up. So this is what we'll call as the planning which we do before the occurrence of monsoon. If you go ahead and if you see the national disaster relief agencies, they will be looking at whether we are going to deploy boats. Okay. Deploy boats in different regions. Then they are going to also see what we will call as evacuation zones. So there are for example, if you remember, Kerala floods of last year required that many of the people had to be evacuated. So what are you going to do about the evacuees? Where are you going to make them stay? So typically these are all going to be schools, these are all going to be some other cooperation, the corporation or the municipality or other local bodies, what I'll call as the places where they have earmarked for keeping the people. So they will know where these people are going to stay, what is the food which we have to give, what is the medical care which we have to give them. So they how are we going to bring the boats? See, the thing is, after the floods come, to take the boats to different regions is very difficult. So usually what we'll do is we will keep these boats already ready and pre positioned, so that the moment the disaster strikes, you are in a very good position to move the boats to the places. The boats are there exactly in the places where you need them. That is the very important thing. So after we go for the evacuation zone, you will also have to look at what we call as the we need to keep monitoring the weather system, see what is going to happen. So once this is done, you are going to save lives. The main thing which we are going to have a look at is we are going to save lives. So we are going to save lives. So because lives are not going to be easy to, I mean, like, life cannot be brought back, but other things you can very easily do. So once the flood occurs, you will have, of course, be monitoring things like the various dams. You are going to look at other facilities like check dams and other things which are likely to be the causes of further disasters. So typically, you'll see that many of the cases will be such that because the people are not monitoring the levels and discharging the water at the right time, the dams underwent failure. So these are other things which you'll be probably doing at the time of the floods. So usually you'll see, the chief minister or the prime minister or other people going around and visiting the flood affected areas in helicopters. So they will probably work out, like, they'll be briefed by the district agencies as to what is the cause of the, or what is the underlying cause of the problem for the people. So this is some of the things which are of very great importance. Okay, during the floods. Now after the floods, this is the place where people come and see that there is a loss of livelihood. For example, you'll be very often met with statements that farmers underwent a lot of loss because of the floods. Okay, this is a thing which usually comes, but there are other things, like vehicles can get damaged. It can be a personal car. Okay, you may be able to afford to get another one, but everybody, you will find that it's will find it a loss. It can be a loss of the vehicles, it can be loss of houses, it can be water damage to furniture, or anything for that matter, which is going to cause distress to the people. So there is a loss of property, loss of livelihood. And other very important thing is that there can be the sickness which could accompany, like we were talking about cholera, diarrhea, and other malaria. So many other diseases could also come. So how are we going to combat all of these, right? So this, when we are looking at the problem, we are in a very good position to understand what should be the solution. So whatever we do is going to be constituting the plan. Okay, so whatever we do is going to constitute the plan. So whenever we are planning out what you call as the solution to a disaster, you will be most likely what you call as looking at how you can probably limit the damage. So you will be looking at limiting the damage. The other very important thing which we will be probably doing is we will be finding out the threats. So the threats we will be seeing under two headings. One, what is the risk posed by something, and who are vulnerable. When we say vulnerable, who are going to get very badly affected because something is happening. Okay, in this case, in our particular case, we are looking at floods. We are looking at floods. We are seeing what can happen, or what are the things which can go wrong when there is a floods, right? So you can take any of the natural disasters which you are looking at. Okay, so particularly earthquake, landslides, and maybe tsunamis, floods. All right. So you will be you'll be looking at all of these things. So once you evaluate all of this, you are going to allocate responsibility, right? You're going to allocate responsibility. Maybe some of your parents are doctors. Okay. Now in the current pandemic situation, the amount of what we call as the amount of responsibility which is on them is very high, especially the government doctors and even some of the private hospitals where where they're designated as this COVID handling hospitals. So when we are looking at it, we are going to we are going to uh, we are going to allocate responsibility. Who is going to do what? Typically, you will find that many times the revenue officials and the police force are the people who are enforcing any of these disciplines. Okay, when I say discipline, any of the relief work and other things. Of course, there is also the natural disaster relief force which is there. So each of them will have different work so that they don't duplicate somebody's work, or one person is going to do something and the other is going to undo the same. It is not going to be uh, it is not going to help anybody in the long run. One of the other very important things is when you're making a plan, you have to have a coordinated effort. Okay, what is this coordinated effort? It like we were just telling, there should not be a thing situation where somebody does the work and another person goes and undoes the work. And again, there should not be the competition where one person is trying to do something and the other person is trying to undo the effort of the other. So these are very important, and these efforts are typically done at different levels. See, for example, at the start of the pandemic, you will see that the at the start of the pandemic, the prime minister was the one who initiated a lot of stuff. For example, the very first lockdown in March. So you will find that almost 5 months have passed, right? Almost 5 months has passed very quickly. I mean, at least I am finding it very fast. But I don't know how many of you are really suffering. Like many of you might have faced a lot of personal tragedy in the middle of this pandemic. But anyway, the thing is that 5 months ago, you would have noticed that the prime minister was the one who first initiated certain measures, like the Sunday lockdown. Right now, one side, yes, we've been keeping on extending the lockdown by a week, month, and so on and so forth. After a particular point, it was the chief ministers who were taking the decision. So my state is not going to allow rail traffic to open. My state will not allow people from a particular state or other states to come to my state. My state will allow buses to ply within district boundaries. Okay, so on and so forth. There were so many plans which were done. Later on, you'll find that it is within the district that we are working. Slowly, if you see, now only the houses where people have shown COVID symptoms, they are being barricaded. Otherwise, everything is almost, opening up. So now, this kind of shows what I'll call as the coordinated effort. There is a level of coordination among different, what you call as, the people who are involved. Who is going to take a decision? How is it going to be done? This coordination comes to greater importance when we are seeing a disaster like floods, earthquake, and because the instantaneous, what you call as, the effect is very very large. Of course, like for example, we had the problem in Lebanon where we were having the uh, warehouse go up in flames. It was a horrible thing. However, those are also disasters. So those are also disasters. Those are also disasters which happen at a very short interval without much notice. Okay, but one thing is certain. Like when such a thing happens, people, have to have what you call as a coordinated effort, so that like for example, if everybody is going to the same hospital, the doctors may not be able to say no, but the point remains that the waiting time for all the people who are going to that hospital is going to be increased. So this is what I'm trying to put across as the need for coordinated effort. So again, we can keep what you call as have we can drill down all of these things and work out a plan. So whenever you are asked to work out a disaster mitigation plan, you have to see what are the things which can cause different kinds of damage. For example, you suppose there are things which are hanging, those need to be put down. But then when we are looking at what we call as a degree level of people trying to talk, I strongly feel that you can make your plan a little bit more elaborate. Just sticking to one or two points might not be the best what do you call way to put it out. So if you ask me how you're going to talk about a plan in general. So first and foremost, you need to identify what are the hazards. Okay, so first step is hazard identification. Okay, so you can probably give a few examples like what we have done just now. So clearing up of drains which can cause further flooding. Okay, then evacuation of people in the low-lying areas and identifying places where these people can be put up. Okay, so this will essentially be part of the pre-disaster specification. Then we are coming to the actual disaster, okay, where we are talking about police and other people, NDRF and other teams being given specific responsibility, right? They are given specific responsibility, so they know clearly what they are expected to do and what someone else is going to do. This is also very important so that people don't jump between or don't do each other's work, right? And again, you will also have to go for, so this could be the pre disaster stage. Then we are going to have the during disaster stage. Okay, and we are also going to have the post disaster space. Okay, so now one of the things which I'll urge all of you to do is, we were asked to do this even earlier. I'm again asking you to please go and study the uh, disaster management, what you call as the guidelines which are there for your district. Okay, you'll find that it is based on the disaster management guidelines given by your state. And again, there is the national disaster management agencies. Okay, because there are so many handbooks and other things which are there. Every district will have the disaster plan in place. It will have the risk identified earlier and kept. What are the risks which are going to be there? So if you see Vellore, you will find that even lightning is a risk which has been talked about. Now, they have also mentioned about the Pala River being there and how it has not had floods for a very long time. So it means that there is a chance that flooding could take place, but the probability that flooding is going to take place is very low. Probability of flooding taking place is very low. So this, or what I'll call as these are some of the points which we wish to highlight when we are talking about a disaster plan being made, right? So I hope that this lecture or this session helps you guys to understand as to what constitutes or what can be talked about as a disaster plan, or what you're going to call as mitigation, or how you're going to work out the mitigation, right? I'd like to know, suppose any of you have any questions, please. Any questions from any of you, please? Right. Uh, I request all of you to please ensure that like today you'll be getting the instructions on how to go about filling up the NGO assignment. Okay, once it is opened, you please have a look at it and let me know if you have any questions.